Hey, revolutionaries. Happy New Year. Hey, it's 2019. The year is just getting kicked off. And before we go any further, I just want to say a big thank you, give out a big thank you to everyone who's been listening and who's been talking about the show or sharing the show with their friends and family, or have written reviews for the show, or have put a link on their blog or on their website for the show. I really appreciate it. It helps drive the visibility, but also helps share the value that everyone's getting out of the show for everyone who's listening. Also to people that have just given me feedback personally, that email in feedback from time to time, or comment on the Facebook page. Really appreciate it. I have a feeling that going forward, 2019 is going to be a revolutionary year for everyone who's listening out there, and for myself as we continue to dig into technology, entrepreneurship, and personal reinvention, and pivoting into the new digital economy. But nothing's going to change, and no reinvention is going to occur without action. So it's time to start taking action, and I would love to hear what everyone is doing early in the year here. See, as I'm recording this, it's January 2nd. Okay, what are you doing early in the year here to take action to actually demonstrate a change in behavior or a reinvention that you're starting? So I'd love to hear what everybody's doing. You can drop me an email to jimjim@jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com and let me know, or you can put it within your review on iTunes, which would be really cool. So give a little review and say, and by the way, I'm kicking off my year doing this. That would be awesome, so everybody out there can also see what's going on. And actually later today, I'm going to do a Facebook Live and show you a couple of things that I do as a ritual kind of at the beginning of the year every year to kickstart my focus and get me organized to move forward. So watch out for that on the Facebook page. I know I will have already recorded it by the time you hear this podcast, so just check out the replay. And speaking of taking action, let's get to this week's episode with Cory Finding, who's recently taking massive action and starting a new project, a new company called LabelChain.io, whose concentration is helping people in the supply chain space and putting supply chain on the blockchain. I love this episode because Cory's very honest and authentic about his experience and how he changed from a pure techie to a real business development specialist and entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur now. He's really got a lot of great experience and a super customer-focused mindset, which I love, man. I mean, he's really speaking my language here, so can't wait for you guys to listen to it. It's a great way to kick off 2019, so here's the episode.
Welcome to Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit JimJimsReinventionRevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim Jim.
All right, let's give it a shot. Here we go. Hey everybody, this is Jim Jim. Welcome to episode 46 of Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. And I'm talking today with Cory Finding, who's finding supply chain solutions on the blockchain. So, Cory, welcome to the revolution.
Thank you very much.
Hey, well, thanks for being here. Thanks for dialing in. As we jump right into it here, I want to talk about supply chain. So, what is that for everybody who's listening out there? Because I'm not sure everyone knows exactly what that means. They probably heard it before and have an idea kind of what that means to them in their life, but maybe from the manufacturing world and maybe into the kind of maybe commercial consumer world. How would you describe supply chain? What does that mean?
Sure. I think it starts at raw materials. So it starts as early as before the product's even created, understanding where that material comes from, how it gets interjected into the process of manufacturing, then taking that product, watching it through manufacturing to completion. CRM, ERP solutions all become part of the entire chain of custody within an organization. And then it moves to logistics, to vendors, to shipping, receiving, distributors, customers. It's just a track and traceability of that entire process.
I see. And in terms of the state of today's supply chain, how would you describe it? What do you know about kind of the way to look at it,
It was built, it really has not matured much. Besides new tech coming out that really speaks directly to the needs within supply chain, it really hasn't morphed much to the point where there's more accountability or more of a solution when it comes to track and traceability. And I think that's because things like blockchain or Hyperledger were not really adopted. Manufacturers are typically behind the times, do not look at new technology favorably. Maybe they don't want to sit in the bleeding edge. They want to sit well within their confines. And I think that's kind of where it's been and what we're trying to change about it.
I see. Well, I think that you highlighted one important aspect right there is that I think they are averse to risk. Some of the big manufacturers out there, for example, I used to work for General Motors and talk about, a worldwide supply chain. When you're in the automotive business, that's all what manufacturing is about, basically, is, tracking these parts. And, to explain a little bit further about the supply chain, how it kind of interacts with everything, if you're a manufacturer, you might be manufacturing, maybe 50% of the parts that are in your good that you're going to sell eventually to the end customer, maybe 75%. But you're always going to have some kind of suppliers that are supplying the screws or, things that's not in your expertise. And then you might assemble part of it and then send it out of house for a test, or send it out of house to have some electronics integrated into it, or some software programmed into it. And then you get it back, and then you assemble the next few parts, and then you test it and ship it out the door. So it can be a complex thing. And when companies like General Motors, for example, they've built up their supply chain over years based on the technology that was available, right? And they're comfortable with it. And when they go to change anything, they're really kind of probably afraid of breaking the chain that they have. So that's probably part of why they're slow to move on these things. But what's happening now with blockchain, and how is that going to affect the supply chains that are in place, or how might it improve them?
Yeah, so I think trace and trackability really become the crux of what supply chain will lean on and integrate blockchain throughout. So the ability to actually show the product ownership as it moves from custody to custody across the process, and then eventually validating the product, whether it is at another manufacturer, it might be a bolt that goes to a lawnmower maker and that bolt needs to be installed properly. Is it really the manufacturer's bolt, or was it a third-party bolt, or was it something that came from China in a box that looked like it was the bolt you were supposed to be buying, right?
Right.
Or is it a product that should be delivered, and is it being delivered where it should be? And do we have record of that? And I think those things all create that chain of custody and the validation of the product across the ownership of it.
Right. Yeah, I think the kind of what popped up into my mind while you're talking there is there's a big compliance aspect to this as well. Where you're obviously the manufacturer, whoever's selling it, wants to have the pride in their brand, what their brand stands for. But there's also government entities and like the FDAs of the world and all those kind of things that you have to demonstrate compliance. Or even when you're shipping goods across borders, for example, in order to levy the taxes properly, and the bills of lading have to get worked out. There's a lot of just compliance aspects that I think are handled today. It's more, sort of human intensive, where there's organizations in place that are just built to check on these things and process paperwork, et cetera. So I think some of the new technology could create some efficiencies. So tell me about blockchain in general, how it might create the efficiencies, because people know, I've heard the term blockchain now, probably starting to hear it to death if you're in the tech world. Maybe it's just starting to getting out to the more common parlance in the average consumer. But blockchain is this ledger type system that will do what and does what for supply chain.
Well, it creates a record, and it creates good behavior. Because it's unalterable, you can add information to it, but you cannot change the information on it. So you can create this ledger of process, of validation, of trace and trackability. As you said, certificates or risk mitigation solutions can all be added to it, but you cannot alter anything, which allows you to really show that chain of custody and create good actors within inside of the environments that are part of the process that you might have as a manufacturer. It could be anything. It could be retail, right? It's good behavior really cuts out a lot of risk, and it cuts out a lot of processes that really are put in places just as checks and balances that you might not need. So that's, I think, the value it'll provide is kind of streamlining that process.
I see. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Keep going. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that, it's going to grow. Blockchain is going to grow when it comes to implementation within these networks. Right now, it's just adoption of that solution. It's like Web 3.0, right? It's a back-end solution that really provides a new layer to and allows people to dev within some tech solutions that are really unique today. And to say that we know where it's going to be or how it's going to change manufacturing or supply chain in the future, I think is really a bold statement. Because as new techs come out, as new solutions, apps, or ERP solutions or CRM solutions, or the blending of which, I think we're going to see new solutions that blockchain can fill very quickly and really provide value for that.
Yeah, I see. Well, wow, you said a couple of interesting things there that you don't really, it's hard to predict, I guess, the impact that it will have. And that kind of brings up a question in my mind, because one of the big, I guess, supply chain projects or applications that are out there is this VeChain or VET or VeChain Thor, or this big project that I know of that is supply chain oriented, that people have been reporting on, that it's going to be a big factor in impacting all of this stuff. Any thoughts on VeChain or VEN, or what that means or what they're doing?
Look, any technology has to have adoption. And, when we first talked about this, the big issue is you have these archaic, very slow behemoth companies that are very timid when it comes to any type of uplift of tech within their organization. And these solutions, as they come in, they're right, earth shattering.
Right.
People, you hear that all the time. We're going to change the world, and the adoption just doesn't happen. So I've been around tech long enough to know to be cautious, to understand that sales leads, and that any type of new technology that's not something that gets directly into consumers' hands and builds backwards from the consumer. Really, the adoption is dependent upon the sales of it and the acceptance in the community that it's meant for.
I see. I gotcha. Well, is that something that let's see, that consumers can drive somehow, or would want to drive somehow, I guess?
I think validation through blockchain will be driven by the consumer. Now, they're not going to know it's blockchain, right? They're not going to care that it's blockchain. But to say that this is not a third party, scanned in China, rebuilt product that's not the product I ordered, even though it looks like it, smells like it, tastes like it, that's a big deal to consumers, right?
Right.
Consumers will not scroll down the page for the most expensive item, assuming that is the right item. They will look for the best cost at the most reasonable shipping time, and that's what they'll buy. Now, as products start to fall apart or degrade, or they're not the right products, that's when consumers say, okay, enough's enough. And I think that's what you see with millennials and earlier right now, is that movement towards buying products that are not only sustainable, but, really quality goods, and not buying it twice if you can avoid it, right?
Right.
Or getting a longer shelf life out of it. And that's typically done through an organization that's invested in R&D and really understands what they're providing for the consumer, not the third-party knockoff that comes along right afterwards, right?
Right.
So I think consumers will drive that backward behavior into blockchain. They're not going to care it's blockchain. They're not going to care what it's called at the end of the day. They just want that validation.
Right. I see. Okay, that explains it. Yeah, because I was thinking kind of like a layer or two underneath that. But right, from the top layer, the consumer, they're like, hey, I'm getting a better good and service. I can trust these organizations a little bit more than maybe yesterday. I can trust them more today because they're doing something different, and everything I'm buying now I really like, or I'm getting the value that I expected, etc. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So, well, we'll see what plays out with some of the projects that are out there. But speaking of these projects, tell me about this new project or new company or new application that you're driving with labelchain.io.
Sure. So our product is a trace and trackability solution that exists as a layer on top of existing supply chain management solutions. So we don't uplift technology. We don't come in and say you have to adopt our technology and embed it into your solution.
Mm-hmm.
What we do is we build a layer of a ledger built on blockchain 721 technology, tokenized solution, sorry. And what we do is we call APIs into our network, build the ledger that way, and provide trace and trackability across all the different solutions within our organizations that we're able to, so that we can watch it from raw goods, CRM, sales, ERP, whatever solutions they might have, logistics, distributor model, and then to the customer, and provide that validation that it's where it's supposed to be, when it's delivered, and it's the correct product. And then we offer engagement solutions at that time. So, I think I said a couple times already that we're not leaning on the fact that the word blockchain is going to make someone want to buy our product.
Right.
In supply chain, we're assuming that within the next 5 years, most technology will adopt blockchain solutions.
Right.
So our solution is purely built upon the fact that if we can engage the customer at the time we validate the product, we have a captive audience. 2% of all clicks online right now are bots. And that's double spending when it comes to advertising or engagement. If we can provide a relevant solution at the time of validation and provide an engagement, a retargeting effort at that time, we can help the customer perform training on the product they've delivered, order information, right? Mm-hmm. Customer service information. We can get down to MSDS files for manufacturers. We can provide training, online training, call customer service applications, anything we might need to make sure we support the brand and support the delivery of the product, but also support resale and retention of the product.
Wow. Okay. Well, okay. This sounds like very, very full featured. Sounds like an awesome endeavor, and I just want to highlight a couple things because you said them so fast, but I think there's so much value in there. I want to drive them home a little bit more because the first thing you said is that you're building on top of the supply chain systems that are in place. Correct? Could you explain that a little bit? Because I think this is the right way to approach it. I think initially, and will provide immediate value to some of those folks that maybe don't understand the technology, are maybe wary of it, or know they need to do something but don't know where to start because of their legacy systems.
Sure. So typically, I'm not going to say all, but most systems today have APIs so you can do calls against. Mm-hmm. So instead of going in and saying you're going to replace your CRM and the supply chain piece and put ours inside of it, so you're going to have a complete overhaul of tech and then a total learning curve and adoption. We say that we're just going to sit over top and we're going to do calls against those systems that exist today to watch things happen and to make sure that we're validating it against our blockchain solution, mm-hmm. so that we can, without a doubt, prove that each step of the way happened and it happened the way it was supposed to inside of our network. We don't have to integrate with all of them, right? So right. If you have we've talked to a couple small manufacturers who are like, look, we got HubSpot and we got this old legacy system over here. And really, if we could dashboard and show that the product's valid and that we know where it went and then engage the customer at the back end, that'd be perfect. And sometimes we can do that just through a CRM. Mm-hmm. If they're a small manufacturer. Larger manufacturers, you're going to look at multiple solutions in order to deploy a product. They're going to want to watch raw goods. They're going to want to watch manufacturing, logistics information. They're going to want to know, was it cooled properly when it was shipped, right? Some products are heat sensitive, so they're going to want to understand those things. And that all becomes part of that ledger and proof of process.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, so I could see where it's sort of like the customer can decide, how little or how much he wants to start changing, or how much data that he has provided. And that's cool that you'll have this, integrated dashboard or custom designed dashboard for them to start seeing. But the other point, I guess that I thought was interesting as well, is that you're going to drive this information back to basically their customers or their suppliers, so that everybody in the supply chain can start seeing this data. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So that they can actually see those steps of the process.
Mm-hmm.
So the customer validates it. And when they validate it, it will show checks and balances across the board saying, here's every part of the process it's met.
I see.
So that they know right away that the product's valid, and they have a visual representation of that.
Right. Well, the visibility, the transparency, and like you said, having it on the blockchain, it creates that good behavior where everybody starts to kind of snap to attention and be like, hey, we're all going to be good actors now. Not assuming that they were all bad actors before, but if there was, that's just going to reinforce the good behavior part. So really cool. So you know what? You're so well versed in doing all these things, and I know your background isn't specifically in supply chain. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you got into this? This is a new endeavor, like it just started, I think, a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago. But what were you doing before? How did you get to this point? Have you always been a developer or a techie guy?
Yeah, I got actually came out of college directly into the dot-com boom.
Okay.
And worked for a couple of pure startups that were very well funded, had some really great tech solutions. Unfortunately, because at the time and the volatility of it, almost all of them have disappeared to this day.
Wow, okay.
Almost all of them disappeared within a few months or a few years of being created, right? So I really had baptism by fire when it came to entrepreneurship and technology and the ability to create within it. I went into telecom after that and really had a lot of luck. I identified some solutions for a couple carriers that had huge impact on them. And during deregulation, people were paying attention to how quick they can generate revenue and how quick they can manipulate the carriers, but no one was paying attention to the back of the deregulation papers that said once these things happen, we're able to reverse deregulation and start charging these carriers who are dependent on our services whatever we wanted to.
I see. Okay.
And because of that, I was able to really create some success for myself. And then I went and built a data center and failed miserably at it.
Oh,
and
really?
Then went and built another data center and did okay at that. And then went out and launched a company in Akron, Ohio, where we raised over $20 million and had some pretty good success in the banking industry. So my legacy's really been around tech and understanding tech and implementation inside of different verticals and understanding how people respond to the product itself, not necessarily to the back end technologies, right? I wasn't the guy at the switch coding, making sure that the 5 ESS was doing all these new unique things so that all the copper lines within a marketplace delivered some new service. I was the guy that went out and said, this customer's looking for X, this customer's looking for Y. If we deliver both services like this, we can deliver it once and make twice the money. And that's where I kind of cut my teeth in tech.
I see. So it's kind of like applications / business development is kind of how I think of that role or that niche, which is unique because you have to have, super high level tech skills to understand what's possible or what's capable, but then, be sensitive to really what's happening in the marketplace, to the customers. What do people want to see? What are they looking for? What would create value, right? Right. Yeah, that's a cool space to be in. And that's kind of the space that I over time figured out I was good in as well. I started out in sort of the researchy and R&D of technology, developed advanced technology. I still do those kinds of things, but I really like understanding the voice of the customer and how to grab that and understand the markets and, build something around it that can serve that voice. So, wow, really cool. Yeah. Well, so when you said you raised money, $20 million for that one company and ended up doing pretty well, were you able to cash out in any of these roles and, kind of have a big win along the way, or you're still kind of trying to keep recreating new things?
Yeah, One or two I've done
Okay.
well.
Nice.
Yeah, I had the one tech I built way back in the day, had a really big payday on. So
Mm-hmm.
that was always exciting and fun. I was young and it didn't last very long.
Right.
I right away invested in other ventures and other solutions that I thought would be up and coming, which I don't think I was wrong about any of them. I built a voice over IP company before it was really prevalent as asterisk servers were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Built some high-end tech delivery solutions. Just really didn't have, at that time, being as young as I didn't have the understanding of business on a daily basis. And I think leadership over the last 10 years, being a C-level executive in two different companies, one which I ran for 3 years, really taught me, P&L.
Right.
And that's so critical for a business. Today with tech,
Right.
you have to be able to run your books as well as you run your tech and as well as you run sales. And without that knowledge set, I just really struggled. I kind of bounced around from being an inventor to being an inventor. And we all know in the entrepreneur world that is the recipe for failure.
Right.
And
That's
I didn't
right.
know that back then. So the last 10 years have been very eye-opening for me. It's been more sit behind my desk, listen, become a leader, help people understand the change that we're making and why change is needed on a daily basis within an organization, and making sure that they don't panic when that change happens. And that's really been the most critical part of any process for me, is just getting to that maturity level as a business person, as opposed to what do they call it, just grinding through every single day, making it new. It's fun,
Right.
but it just doesn't build corporations.
Right. Well, what a great I think analysis and description of your experience, and I find that to be true for me as well. And like I said, when I got out of school, I was that super technology guy, really interested in just the science and tech that was going on. But you soon learn that it's like, hey, what are we doing this for, and what are we going to do with it in the end? When you're approaching different companies or even trying to develop something on your own, you can get down the squirrel hole pretty fast with just burning resources without much return on it, because you're so inside and focused on the technology rather than what you're trying to do or the value that it's going to provide. And you said just having that seasoning of realizing, here's the things that are really important that's going to move the needle. We got to kind of go in this direction and keep these things important. So great to hear that experience. Really cool. So how did you, thinking about that, what led you specifically to labelchain.io? So, this is kind of a new thing. It's new blockchain stuff. So you weren't doing blockchain your whole career because it just got started a few years ago. How did you dive into that and get into the supply chain world?
So it kind of happened by mistake, to be honest.
Okay.
One of the companies I just mentioned, we had a large ESOP, employee-owned company, that was a customer and a vendor of ours, and they have hundreds of credit unions across the country where they supply the technology for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I consulted on a couple solutions for them, helped them realize some technology needs within some verticals inside of their organization. We were dealing directly with credit unions, but they also had a healthcare division that I was assisting with. And because of the relationship and the success we had with them, I've had good friends within that company for a while.
I see.
It just happened that they called me and said that they had a customer that they do a bunch of labeling processes. They do pharma labels, they do tire labels, they do labels on the side of boxes for manufacturing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they called me and said one of their largest customers had a problem. Someone was pirating their product. And because someone was pirating their product, it's a manufacturing solution that goes directly into another part, right? Like you mentioned before, it's not the end product, but it's part of the end product.
Right.
They've started building these overt, covert, trace, and trackability labels. It was a holographic label that used a black light and a loop to identify the solution. And the company that was pirating their product, after 2 months, then deploying this new solution, had already been deploying the same base layer label. So they had already gotten to the same level that they were when it came to the tech they were deploying.
Mm-hmm.
So they looked right at me and said, look, help. We don't know what to do. We're thinking VR, AR, they're
Right.
kind of throwing words around that I don't think they really understood at the time.
Okay.
But really what it came down to was there's a bigger issue inside that industry. You have a distribution channel in the middle that's always asking an OEM for co-marketing money, for money to support sales, right?
Right.
And the OEMs typically will say, sure, we're more than happy to help support more sales. Let us know who the customers are, and we'll give you some more cash.
Sure.
And the distributors always say, there's no way those are our customers. Well, then you have
Right.
the customer sitting there going, I got false product because I ordered it from who knows where, and I thought it was a great deal, but now I got to go back to my distributor, and I want to buy this product, but he's got other products, right? So you kind of get in this whole kludgy mess, this whole soup of he said, she said, and I need and I want, right?
Right.
So when we look at that, it was really more of a solution for them that was less reactive, right? They don't know that the product failed until the product went into the end solution.
Right.
The end solution was shipped to a customer, and this block of machines died. And then they go back and say it was this specific product or part, and this is where we got it, and they have to backtrack it, right?
Right.
And that could take time, and that causes huge risk to brand and to manufacturers when it comes to cost,
Right.
and distributors when it comes to loss of sales. So what we said was, let's build a proactive solution. Let's find a way to validate product for the user and activate warranty, build adoption, or engage that customer with marketing solutions. Let's find a way to force adoption from the OEM. Let's provide a white labeled solution for the distributor so the OEM supporting distribution sales. The distributor gets a white labeled product, whether it's a barcode scanner or dashboard or training materials or an application that has a camera that activates and scans something for them, and deploy MSDS files, like I said before, or engagement solutions to help with sales. Let's mask that data when it comes to name and ownership, but provide it back to the OEM through privacy so that the OEM can see the data and monetize the data for the vendors and help them sell more, right?
Right. Right.
And the solution becomes proactive because the product isn't valid. The smart contract on warranty isn't activated until they use or take the proper steps, which helps everybody along the way. It helps with validation, trace, and trackability, and eliminates covert solutions that are needed for risk mitigation.
I see. So obviously you found this problem. They were looking to you for a solution. You figured out the solution. The right solution just seemed to have recently come along in terms of blockchain, right? Creating this ledger. So that's really cool. So that kind of first consulting project where they brought you in, that was the genesis of the new company, right?
Yeah, that was it. So, they
cool.
looked at us and said, how much does it cost to build it? And I said, it's not going to be how much it costs to build it. It's going to cost monthly. We're going to build it as a SaaS model. We're going to launch the product.
I see.
My tech team sat with me and said, look, this is probably the first time there's a real reason to deploy blockchain. They consulted on a bunch of deals. They've talked to a lot of companies who wanted to force blockchain into a solution just for the fact of the name and the lift it would give their organization, but the validity of that was very null. So our solution really was, we can dev it in Hyperledger, but within 3 to 5 years, supply chain's going to adopt blockchain. Let's just dev it properly now.
Right.
That way we don't have to rebuild it later.
Right. I got you. Well, I love it that these real value creation applications are starting to show their face, coming out into the light versus all the crazy ICO and the speculation and about crypto and blockchain and all these kinds of things. So that's great that you're right in the heart of it, and you've got this new company going on, a new product released. We got a few minutes left, but before we get out of here, there's always a few questions that I'd like to have folks answer that come on the podcast. And one is specifically about technology, and as the technology world keeps spinning faster and faster, it seems. Is there anything about technology or grasping onto these new ideas that is gives you some pause sometimes, since you're so involved in it, or that you see is a cause of concern because of the way you can see the world?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people want to leech on to what's made other people a lot of money. And it's typically, once something is deployed, it's who can do it better and has the most money to deploy it, right?
Right.
That race is not a race inside of tech that you want to play. I think if you stay to your core knowledge base and understand the struggles within those organizations and help really engineer solutions that make their organization better. I know as techs, one of the things we have gotten trapped in and fallen victim to for my 20 years in technology and anybody else I know is we start to talk specifically the language we know. And people, their eyes glass over, they get lost very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't help anybody at the end of the day. Your solution could be the greatest solution in the world, but if you can't dumb it down and really understand how to market the product properly, you're going to struggle. So I think that, that's probably the one piece of advice I'd give anybody going into tech is build the tech, make it as amazing and bulletproof and robust as possible. But if you don't have a go-to-market strategy that people understand, you're going to struggle in the launch of that product at the end of the day.
Right. Well, nuggets of gold right there, everybody. So I love hearing this experience and bringing out the real insights, that everybody can share here on the podcast. Awesome. Well, this kind of leads into my next question in terms of, because things are changing and because, you need to be, if you're in the tech world, maybe be more sensitive or change your outlook sometimes. How do you keep an open mind to grasp these new ideas or to change your outlook or to change from being so technical to more customer oriented as time moves on in order to, stay engaged and take advantage of all the opportunities that are cropping up?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. I wish I had the golden arrow there. I think that I find marketing and engagement solutions very interesting. And my brain kind of moves that way when somebody says, here's a problem I have and here's a product we have. I never say, well, have you tried X, Y, and Z? Because of course they have. Typically, I try to draw a dotted line between the issue the product might be having in adoption and then where deployment becomes a critical mass for them and trying to figure out where that bridge is to kind of seamlessly pull that gap together. And I just kind of dig that. That's just kind of my billywhack. I think that everybody has something different though. And I think that that's really what you should focus on when it comes to tech. And, you don't have to know everything about everything. I can tell you, I don't know much about crypto at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't care. It doesn't tickle my fancy at the end of the day. Cash and open markets and stuff like that. It's great. I think we all are involved in them one way or another, but I'm not an investor. And because of that, I don't care about cryptocurrency and the value of it and trading it and stuff like that. I think the people that are interested in that have a genuine interest in investment. And
right.
I'm more interested in engagement solutions. And that's, I think, why I've been successful is I stay focused on that, but I also make sure I educate myself on tech and understand what people deal with on a daily basis. Who's your customer and how are they engaging with you? What technology are they using? And can I touch it and see it so that I can understand the shortcomings of it and help you build a bridge between those and your product?
Right. I got it. Yeah, it sounds like, to me, it's like real active listening, just really trying to understand the voice, the issues, the pain points that are out there. And I love how you're able to kind of maneuver and kind of fill in the gray areas with, your knowledge base and the technologies that are out there. You're not making an assumption that this technology is the right technology for every, problem that's out there or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. I got one more question for you, and that is, through all these different, in changes and reinventions and now starting this new company, is there a reinvention revelation that you can share with everybody, something that popped up along your journey here that, you couldn't have predicted or wouldn't have imagined that you learned about yourself or about, business?
Oh, I think, I don't know. I just think that no matter how downtrodden and tired and beat up. It's the end of the year, right? I think we're probably
Right.
both sitting here going, we're almost home.
Right.
We're almost home.
Exactly. I know I am.
Yeah. So I think it just kind of gets to the point where some days it's the grind, right? You got to
Right.
get up. You got to do the same things. You got to take care of yourself. This last year I ran my first ultra marathon.
Wait a second. Ultra marathon?
Correct.
That's like
So
100 miles, right?
No. I did not do a 100-miler yet. I did a 50K, which is a little over 31 miles, and it was a trail race with a bunch of vertical. And
They call that an
they
call that an ultra marathon. Okay, I thought ultra marathon was 100 miles. Sorry. My
No,
bad.
it's anything over a full marathon, and are typically trail runs.
That's amazing
Yeah.
in itself. I'm not. That's incredible.
That's okay. No,
Yeah.
100 miles is amazing.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
agree. But just to kind of set those goals outside of work to make
Yeah.
sure that you're, taking care of yourself and you're ready for the stresses that come along with tech and entrepreneurship and growing a company.
Right.
And then making sure that you're aligned for the next year. And a lot of people make, hey, I'm going to do this in 2019. I'm going to do that in 2019. I'm going to work out more. And look, I just want to make sure that my budget's in line and that we're able to deploy properly for customers. And I think that those simple steps of making sure that our team has the right leadership, has the right people motivating them, and is able to go out and perform on a daily basis on their own is just as important as, laying down a bunch of rules for myself that I probably won't follow. Right.
Right.
And then setting, you have to have those audacious goals. You got to have in business and in health, you've got to have those goals that really push you beyond your limits to say, I got to get home at 6:00 tonight because I got to run 25 miles in the woods. I don't care if it's dark and snowing or pouring rain.
Right.
And no one's going to talk to me then because I need some Zen. I need me. I need my headphones, and I need to curse out everybody I know and done business with within the last 5 years within my head because I need to get some sort of release, right? And that's just
Right.
part of life.
I love that one. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just part of business, and you got to kind of come to grips with yourself and with your business. And in order to do that, you've got to have extracurricular activities inside your life.
Right. Well, man, Cory, absolute gold right there. I'm telling you, that's. I really think about this a lot these days for myself in terms of reconnecting, disconnecting a little bit, having some Zen moments, working out, and I like the idea of when you set goals in your personal life, it kind of overflow into your business life and vice versa. When you finish a goal or attain a goal personally, you're just that much more motivated to go to work and attain a work goal, for example, and vice versa. So it's kind of just builds this upward spiral of just productivity and centeredness in your life. So, wow.
As my business partner would say, it's character and nuance that make people fantastic, right?
Yes.
And that's so true. I mean,
yes,
you want to meet people that have very cool things to say about themselves, very unique things to talk about themselves. And they also have the character to stay in the room and show leadership. And that doesn't come just from being in a business place. And those people that are stuck in the business place typically lack some of those nuances that really create great leaders. And I think that's just kind of how our industry is built.
Right. I agree. Yeah, you can be a great worker, but being a great leader, you might have to take a little bit different tact or different path and have some different balanced things going on in your life. Yeah, wow. That's some great insight there. Very cool. So, Cory, hey, it's been great having you on the show. If people are interested in finding more information about labelchain.io or you, where would you send them? What should they do?
Yeah, if you go to labelchain.io, you can hit a link at the bottom of the page. I think it actually goes directly to me, to be honest.
Okay.
If not, you can always reach us at sales@labelchain.io, or you can email myself at cfinding@labelchain.io. And I'm more than happy to talk to people when I have a free moment.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks again for being on. Appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time, and remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of. Hey, revolutionaries, if you enjoyed today's episode and today's guest, let them know by commenting on their Facebook page, finding their Twitter handle or Instagram feed, and letting them know you heard them on Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and tell them what you got out of the episode, what you really liked, or how they inspired you. I know they would get a kick out of it, and will help others find the same value that you found.